All right, we're going to get started with tonight's CPAC meeting. I'm going to begin by All right. We're going to start with the minutes from November 30th. There's one correction so far, and that's just that Joanne Robati was excused, so not present. And that was the only real correction I had. Did anyone else have anything for November 30th?
No.
I get a motion to approve the minutes.
That's amended, so moved.
All in favor? Thank you. So November 30th is approved. There were some corrections to the December minutes, so we'll hold those and we'll do them at the next meeting. So the next dates that we have for meetings are, we've got a full house.
Up here, Wendy?
Full chair up.
Just pull that chair up too.
So the next meeting dates I have are January 12th and February 9th. Fridays? They're both Fridays,
Not the 22nd.
not the 22nd.
Oh, you pulled that one?
Yeah, not enough people can make it. So it'll be the 12th and the 9th, January 12th, February 9th. Sounds good. All right, so
Good
then,
on both of them.
okay, awesome. All right, so then the next item on the agenda is the Suffolk County Planning Commission recommendations. So as you guys know, we sent the draft.
Oh, okay.
We sent the draft that the public commented on to the Suffolk County Planning Commission just for their cursory notes on what we had done to date to see what recommendations and suggestions they had for us. And so they reviewed everything and they came back to us with, a lot of things that we already knew. Some things were already in there that I think they might have missed or we need to make more obvious maybe in the plan. But if we go to their advisory comments on page 6 of their report. Go through them. So the first one is that the town's encouraged to include a table of contents, and we're very well aware of that. It's just one of those things that it was in the works. Some tables referenced in various chapters are either missing or mislabeled, and there are things that did get lost in translation, so we're going to fix that as well. The next one is more attention should be made to the use of natural vegetation, green methodologies to control and manage stormwater runoff. The town is encouraged to review the Suffolk County Planning Commission publication managing stormwater nature, vegetation, and green methodologies and incorporate into the plan where practical and design elements contained therein. So I did put their document into our SharePoint. So it's in a folder in SharePoint, Suffolk County Planning Commission, and it has it in there. And we do have recommendations for swales and rain gardens and things like that in the plan already. So I'll look and see what their recommendations are and see if they're in line with what we have. Let's see. Attention to be made to energy efficiency. Suffolk County Planning Commission guidelines on energy efficiency can be found at the Planning Commission website, so I included that in our SharePoint. Our sustainability chapter has a lot on efficiency and sustainability and making sure that we have good building practices. And we also have the ETIP grant, which is specifically working on making the island and the municipal buildings more energy efficient and resilient. So I think we'll have that covered. The town is encouraged to expand recommendations on transportation policies. such as development designs that include networks for pedestrian and bicyclists with shortcuts and alternative routes to travel along high-volume streets. We do have a lot of recommendations to help kind of support that, but maybe we can make a map that has, safer bike paths to certain places.
Yeah, and recommendation 6.5 sort of.
Right. Attention should be made to universal design, creation of housing that works for special needs populations and on-site public safety. The town is encouraged to review the Suffolk County Planning Commission guidelines on universal design and public safety. I put it in our folder. We did talk about this with Suffolk County Planning Commission. The housing plan is part of the comprehensive plan, and it does have ADA accessible build to rent kind of construction plans. So we are looking to build ADA compliant apartments. So that kind of will be.
It might be worth mentioning that in other places,
Yeah.
just because it's such an important issue.
Chapter itself, yes.
Housing chapter, but any other places where it's getting into town buildings or whatever.
Right. I think when we get into the quality of life chapter, it'll come in there with seniors and things like that too. The next one is the town should review the recommendation to lease underwater lands for aquaculture and verify jurisdiction. That's something that we would do in partnership with the county and state, and the town does have jurisdiction for the first 1,500 feet from the shore. So that's always something that we can look at. But if we decide to go that route, obviously it'll be thoroughly vetted. Update goals stated at the end of each chapter to include lettering like A, B, C, to be consistent with letters. So we did recognize that here. Chapter 11 has, 1A, 2B, but the boards don't. So we know to fix that. It would be helpful if there's more clarity and consistency with the terminology used throughout the plan, implementation tools, and then the subsequent paragraph discusses critical methods. So just kind of cleaning up the language. We'll go through and clean that up. The town provides a list of zoning recommendations in Chapter 11, which also specifies where in the plan the goal and recommendations are discussed. There do not appear to be any examples of any specific zoning amendments or a proposed zoning map included with the draft plan. Likewise, the draft plan does not include specific land use recommendations or recommended land use map, okay. We're not proposing large-scale zoning changes. They're more policy changes that'll impact current zoning. So we'll create a map that shows where those possible changes will take place.
I think the enforcement seems to be such a big issue. I was talking with some citizens today, and they were so negative about, there's a feeling or perception out there, there's zero enforcement, which may not be true, but emphasizing that. It is the perception.
Yeah. And it's hard to do because we have so few staff. I mean, it's a challenge, but they do the best they can. And part of it is the code is just weak. If we can strengthen code in certain places, it's easier to enforce.
But
And part of the
well, I did
issue that
mention,
we've mentioned before, the people who sit on the various committees, who are, adjudicating on their neighbors, requests.
yeah,
And need to know that there's more teeth. People want more teeth in
Yeah.
enforcement.
All right, next one.
Which actually would probably get a lot of community support, even if it requires expanding the staff to
yeah,
handle code enforcement.
yeah, it's hard. I mean, this year the tax levy has gone up a bit, and that did not include new. And we have expanded them over there, that building department, and we do have a special part-time code enforcement officer that does off-hours work, which is good for serving people and all of that. So I think we're getting better, and it will improve over time. Probably not fast enough, but I did mention to someone, I think in a meeting publicly, and I said, enforcement is everybody. It's everybody. If you see your neighbor violating the wetlands, well, I'm not going to be a tattletale, was the response. And I'm like, what? We can't be everywhere, or you don't really want us everywhere, do you? I mean, what kind of...
You can't really ask citizens to play cops. I mean,
No, but I do think that it's all of ours.
tell the town.
Yeah, that's,
Well, yeah.
I mean, no,
They shouldn't take any
not to
action.
engage, no, but to say that I think a violation's happening over here. It was a windy day and they were spraying pesticides.
At least check it or something like that.
And possibly look at maybe a reprioritization of the code enforcement.
Yeah,
Just looking at the method on how they handle complaints and maybe push them in more impactful areas than
Yeah.
others, such as wetlands versus, you know,
Yeah.
illegally parked car or something like
Right.
that. Like just kind of shifting their focus
yeah. To what's-
because their resources are limited, so you have to act accordingly.
You're not gonna
Or
be able to
something
do it
that
all.
people could also, if they happen to be in an organization, like a homeowners association, you can always reach out to them.
Right,
We've
that's
done
kind of
that
a
so that
neutral
people
party,
just, you know,
yeah.
say, hey, I noticed this, and would you like to inquire? And then we had the board inquire on their
Right.
behalf, so you could do that.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, and some violations are moving targets,
Mm.
you know, it's there one day, it's gone the next day. So it's tricky. And then another similar note on making clarity of the language. Recommendations and action items tend to be used interchangeably, so we can clear that up. And then parts of chapter 11 are segmented by previous chapters. So it's just making it more streamlined and consistent. The town of Shelter Island has made a lot of progress in the draft of a document comprehensive plan update. However, the town may want to consider the consolidation of related goals. Input from the comprehensive plan advisory committee and additional public outreach may help identify the more pressing needs of the town and its residents. This in turn would provide guidance to help prioritize goals. So we can see what goals we need to combine, but I think we'll see. And the next one is pursuant to secret regulations, the adoption of a town comprehensive plan is subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Yes, so we will be following SECRA. We just don't have a draft that's ready to go through the SECRA review process. Let's see. It's important to note that prior to adoption of the final the Town of Shelter Island Comprehensive Plan, the town is required to submit the same to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. Yes, we do know that as well.
Could you speak up just a little bit? I couldn't hear the end of that.
Oh, sure. Just that we will be following SECRA like we're supposed to as soon as we have a draft that's complete enough to go through the SECRA process. And that the draft, when it's final and it's ready to go to the town board, will also go back to the Suffolk County Planning Commission for their approval. Those are the last 2 points.
Does it go to the sequel before it goes to the town board or at the same time?
You know, I'm not positive. I'll ask Noah, but I think it kind of happens simultaneously.
Maybe after one public hearing, maybe, that would be, if there's
You
any.
don't want a public hearing on something that's all going to be fixed because
Right.
CEQA didn't accept it. So
Yeah.
it'd be better to have it staged, so you have at least when you go to the
Yeah.
community, this has been approved.
Oh, okay.
Not one, I mean, that would just be my view.
Yeah,
So make,
You still want to have it open for public input. So, they'll do a SECRA review, I think, while, like, if it's what we consider to be our final draft, like, we don't see any more major changes happening, maybe tweaks here and there, and we push it up to the town board, then I think they'll be doing SECRA sort of simultaneously. And then if anything significant results from the public input portion, then they can reassess that part of the SECRA document. Because so it's like a whole, it's
Back and forth.
yeah,
So they don't mind going over it again if there have been significant changes made.
right. But hopefully by the time it gets there, there aren't many significant changes to make. It's a pretty solid document, I hope.
so what's your current thinking on preparing full EIS following the SECRA?
I don't have any opinion on that. That'll be up to the consultants. So that's just the general review of what Suffolk County Planning Commission submitted to us. So there was talk last time about irrigation recommendations.
Mhm.
And we discussed eliminating well-drawn irrigation and then putting restrictions on well-drawn irrigation, making it cistern-based, that kind of thing. And then there was discussion about commercial buildings, like commercial usage. I believe our town code is, wait, I have it all set up. So Suffolk County just passed a new legislation when it comes to irrigation law, requiring that all new irrigation be essentially smart irrigation. So it has to have evapotranspiration-based controllers, it has to have rain sensors, soil moisture devices, things like that. And it does have exemptions. The exemptions it has on that law are land used in agricultural production and agricultural operations, or for nurseries and garden centers, or golf courses, tees, greens, and fairways. So, because there was questions about where the idea of exemptions came from. So that's one of them. And then the other one is for the application for Long Island wells from the DEC. So when you go and you apply for a well, no permit is required for the use of water for agricultural purposes or in the installation of fire wells or cisterns to which no pumping equipment is permanently attached. So, for hydrants and stuff like that, you don't require. So, like ag is typically exempt unless the well capacity or the withdrawal capacity is over 100,000 gallons per day or more. Then you have to just get a license from the DEC. So that's that basic question that came up last time. So. The other thing that came up, did anyone have anything on irrigation they wanted to? We have the recommendation to eliminate well-drawn irrigation and eliminate grandfathered wells.
And I think this is accompanied by an educational program in the chapter, right? Because a lot of people aren't going to know what that means to them.
Yes. And there's a group right now, the WAC is working on education around irrigation and best practices and native plantings to reduce the need for irrigation and that whole kind of thing. And then another group is working on fertilizers and proper fertilizer use and fertilizer restrictions. And on Monday's WAC meeting, they're going to be presenting what they've come up with so far as fertilizer restriction and regulation goes. So that's all things people are moving on, which is great. And then there's wetland setback discussions. That came up with like the 100-foot wetlands line. There was questions about that. So we can put in a recommendation that language that we have.
Currently it's 75.
75 is the hard no-go zone. Like you're not allowed to build in the 75, the zero. So water to 75 feet in, you're not allowed to build. And then from 75 feet to 100 feet, it's a buffer. So anything you do in that triggers a wetlands permit. So if you're going to build in that area, you need a permit to do so. And that's so that we can make sure there's proper mitigations in place, proper silt fencing, proper rain capture, all that kind of thing. So you're not prohibited from building in that 75 to 100 foot, but you do need a wetlands permit to do so. And so, there are members of the community who think that we need to make that a hard no building zone from that 75 to 100. So it's a full 100 feet where you can't do anything.
Well, to John's point, rising sea levels.
Yeah, I think that's critical to acknowledge that's happening now.
I think they allow like 100 square feet inside that zone.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a
An exemption.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's in the 75.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a 100 square foot exemption, but otherwise,
What does that mean? You can build a 10 by 10?
essentially,
house?
because there's a lot of like pre-existing like 10 by 10 gazebos or fire pits or things of that nature.
Deck.
Or deck, like a piece of a deck that extended over. So it kind of allows someone to rebuild something that's existing.
And also the issue with where the no-go zone is next to where the bulkheads are. So somebody went there to put a bulkhead in. So we don't really consider it a no-go zone technically. It's actually a place that construction equipment goes there and they rip things up and they do stuff. So if that's actually going on in a supposed no-go zone, doesn't it make sense? Let's increase this area, this space that is protected. Because obviously,
Yeah, but then you'll still have 100 feet where people are still going to drive through to go do a bulkhead. You know what I mean? It's not like you're ever going to never step on
once
it.
the job is done,
Mhm.
you still have 100 feet of no impact area. It's all native planting or whatever we determine, which protects it.
Mhm.
And the horizontal, what's necessarily important for wave movements or mitigating waves.
Typically, the CAC is recommending like berms and swales to stop that water before it runs down for capture and recharge. So sometimes if you make that correction, at least going in perpetuity, then you have that collection. So it's a one-time fix. So
Right, but if,
sometimes we have to be careful when we say never.
Right.
well, if that's done, unfortunately, we hear a lot of properties that don't have that, unless we tell them to go back and redo that, and we're all in the situation of,
Right.
like, we.
I think if we limit them here, or make the recommendation to limit them, then the CAC wouldn't necessarily ask that as a mitigation measure.
But if it's part of code that everyone must do this, period, then it's,
You understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is put in a recommendation that we just strengthen protections on the wetlands and maybe make recommendations to require certain types of rain capture, require, I don't know, somehow stronger language. I'm not sure. I don't know that I don't know that we should say that the 100-foot is the hard and fast, because I want to go through and see how much nonconformity it's going to create. Because then that creates an extra burden on enforcement, but also on the applicants and the permitting process and just the entire system in general.
I'm just kind of curious what insurance companies think about these on-the-shore houses in terms of insuring them, and especially if there's extensions that go into 75 feet from the water, whatever it is. I mean, in this okay area, but still pretty close.
There was a recent discussion, not at official, like a committee, but somewhere on social media, people were talking about some of the insurance companies had pulled out.
Yeah.
insurance
Hard to even
around,
find
so-
All of them,
Yeah.
almost all of them.
Mine, but by a hair.
Yeah.
But the prices went up and a lot of them bailed out.
Yeah.
Do you guys all, you saw that or experienced that?
It's gonna be harder and harder.
Yeah,
So I'm sure that they're considering what you just said.
Because it seems like if we're telling the homeowner, yes, you can put something there, I mean, it's on them to call their insurance company, but it's also kind of mixed messages. Insurance companies say, well, we're not going to insure that deck.
Yeah.
And yet we're saying, no, go ahead, build the deck. You're still in a safe zone.
It might add, this additional nonconformity, and on a fairly good size, a fairly big scale. But, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so if you are living on our waterfront, you have some responsibilities, I think. So if we made this a little harder at 100 feet, I don't, it's for everybody's benefit as well as, and your own, ultimately, on the shore of a steep hill.
Well, and the other thing that happens too is if you're
Talk about steep hills though.
Should we?
So if it's
I know,
between 75 and you're 40 feet above sea level.
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Well, that's what I was gonna say, is like, if you're low lying, then the DEC is gonna make you put your house on stilts or pilings, because they know it's a flood area. Like, if you're in certain flood zones, you have to raise your house. So you kind of want it back as far on the property as you can get it, so you're not.
But I would appreciate that distinction, elevation, because insurance companies don't care about elevation. They look at straight footage. But in terms of giving these, if you were to give exemptions, elevation could justify some of them.
Could we just say that we'll go back to re-examine this 100-foot setback? I mean, as we have it already, just to
Yeah.
go back and revisit it and rethink about whether we want to make it more strict?
you mean we, the CPAC, or we, the
No,
future
no, I
town,
mean, the
town board?
future.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to put in that revision there.
Right,
I'd
right.
like to see that.
So that's going to need significant public input.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's a decision we can make.
Right.
it would be nice also if we did a hard line thing in our, that we also ask for a method of going back and helping people bring their non-compliant areas into compliance. Like we could maybe offer services from the town, something that would allow the swale to be built, that if we deemed that was the way to go, that we could then help bring more people to this new code because it's a community, it's the name of community spirit, we're trying to protect our island. And rather than just having this one spot that's, okay, you're too late, we have the new law, you have this new system, and everybody else is willy-nilly any which way they want to do. So it'd be nice if we had a way of having that in this, that we're not just making the line, but we're also going to help people come to that line or build to that line in another, series of procedures, programs, whatever, whether it's town provided labor to help dump some dirt there and, or help vegetate areas, or maybe it's
If you have
committees that could do it, groups.
Sorry, John, no, I didn't mean to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm done.
I was just thinking that was maybe what you're referring to, like you have a list of all these people that could potentially be in violation after you change this. But wouldn't you give them some leeway to?
Well, they'd all be grandfathered in. I mean, they'd
Right.
have to be grandfathered. So
Anything they want to do
anything-
then.
But John's saying a little bit more than just
Right, help these
grandfather.
grandfathered people come into compliance.
Right.
Maybe
You're gonna
over
have-
time, give them a little bit more time
Yeah.
to do that.
Right. Or you can provide, this could be it could be a committee, or it could do fundraising, or whatever it may be to help. Because if it's that important for our island, that
You're
we're
getting picked up on the mic, guys. It's disruptive. People online can't hear.
that we're risking the edge of our island due to sea level rise, we have to do something. Having one dam here but have no dam there makes no sense. Or one swale here. So we have to do it uniformly. It has to be a community-wide, hey, we all need to jump on board with this. What can we do to make it happen for all of us? So I just,
Yeah, what'll end up happening is something similar to what's happened with like the health department regulations. So it used to be that you were only required to be 100 feet between your well and your septic system. So you have whole areas of the island that are designed with 100-foot setbacks. So now the law changed to 150 feet. So now you have whole areas that are non-compliant to that 150 foot. So whenever someone goes to do something, then they have to try to get into compliance, which causes the need for variances, the need for a whole bunch of different things. So like there are a lot of areas of the island that were designed for 100-foot setbacks. So now that's an extra challenge. So once that happens and you say the 100-foot's the hard line, anybody who's built anything within that 75 to 100, which has been allowed all the way up to now, is going to be pre-existing non-conforming. And so anything that they do is going to require variances, it's going to require special permits. So it's going to add that burden into the system. So it's definitely worth looking at. We should absolutely look at it. We should make a recommendation that it gets examined and that we come up with solutions for it. But just
does
with
come
the
with a cost.
understanding that it does come with
Mhm.
the cost.
So, but isn't the purpose of that is for the review and the improvement with mitigation measures? So if they're going to do something within that 75 to 100,
They'd be
Right.
told-
then they're going to do other mitigating measures that are going to make it better.
Right. So also strengthening any measures or just actually making it, so there are certain things that the board was requiring for special permit applications that aren't necessarily in code, but we require them so regularly that they might as well be in code. So codifying some of the things that we typically require. So if you're on, pretty much if you're on the waterfront, you should have a low flow pump, for your well. You should have a cistern, you should have things of that
And it
nature.
kind of takes away the negotiating thing, which I think is what we've been
Right.
hearing here. We don't really, as an island, want to do that anymore. We want to say, these are the rules.
Stick to 'em.
Yeah, the
No,
variances are going to be
that's-
very few and far between. And so it becomes codified, it's better.
Because then there's no more bargaining chips, so it's easier to say no. Made that note. Okay. Chapter 8.
I have one more
Yeah.
comment about this, I think. If we all could look at the West Neck watershed plan, I think we got copies of that. If we didn't get a chance to, It's an interesting document, it's 2006. And in reading it, I discovered that had this very wonderful plan. This is done by the Peconic Estuary Program. Suffolk County was involved in this. It was a major, big operation. But they made 2 recommendations. And so I did a little ride around, and these, lo and behold, these 2 recommendations which they made, which were going to protect the water and especially West Neck Bay, they were never done. And now there's a house being built on a lot that was supposed to have had one of these remediation systems built on. And so to me, it's a perfect example of time and energy to develop a plan using outside sources besides Shelter Island. And they came up with a wonderful recommendation. They implemented these recommendations elsewhere on the island. They were not done in that area. I don't know for what reason. There may be legitimate reasons. But now that lot that was going to be built on is now lost. A house is there. And so that's scary to me that we have these things in our history, and that's 2006, that's not that long ago. So what do we do to make sure that all the wonderful hard work that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years doesn't end up being the same situation? So I'm just throwing it out there. We have a solution to it, but it's something that it's really was like, oh my God, we let this go through. How did this happen? How did it sneak through there? Because this would have saved West Neck. I mean, the brown tides, how many times have the brown tide started in West Neck Harbor?
Yeah.
And that's where the incubator for the brown algae is. And these could have saved that. One of these systems was going to be in Harbor View, and the other one was going to be right at the first road intersection there.
Yeah, we had 2 properties in Harborview
Yeah.
that we pointed out to the 2% people. They had no interest, and they would have been perfect for recharge.
That was mentioned in this document, actually. The 2% committee should be referred to, or it's on their list. Actually, some statement says it's on their list to purchase. And it got lost by something else. So again, that's will. That's also saying, this is a mandate. You must be doing this 2% committee. You have to be making, this is your priority. Maybe a pretty piece of land over there, but this we need. That's like a will thing. We've got to have as a collective group of people.
It's the benefit too, not to go back to it, but having someone with some longevity in them in the town government. Call them what you will, but having someone with that resident knowledge to say, hey, yeah, we did do this, we did make those recommendations, or maybe they can answer that question. Why didn't we do it? Oh, we didn't do it for X, Y, Z. But having some person there.
Institutional knowledge.
Exactly.
Right, the problem though is that those 2 lots are now lost forever, and you have no
Yeah.
real recharge up there that could have been substantial.
Yeah.
They weren't just going to be recharge areas. There were areas where we're going to slow down the flow of the water and collect the bacteria and the waste products and have a chance for it to self-mitigate through natural processes. So they were large procedures, the BM, whatever they call them, a fancy name for it. But that would have been really a great thing. It's not just, anyway, I'll be quiet. I said it.
No, you're right. I mean, it would have
Would it be
been quite an asset. And there's a lot there that recently sold that someone's going to build on that's like in the wetlands. That CPF, could have purchased. That would have been beneficial.
I think too many people are still laboring under the idea that climate change is not really anything they have to worry about.
Yeah.
And that their freedom or right to build where, they bought the land, therefore they should be able to do it. It's this whole idea that it's really actually happening now. I think it's missed by too many people.
But, pollution is something really different. We know it exists. We know where it comes from. We know it comes down these certain areas, and we know what it does to our water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that should be driving all of our concern. We like to eat the stuff that grows there. Besides, we don't like to eat plants in the way. We got to have that.
The tragedy of the commons. It's a very famous essay written about that. When I don't own the water, so therefore I'm going to get as much out of it as I can, and whatever other people will do it too. That no one cares for it, because they all think it's kind of just they're free
Until it isn't.
until it's gone. That's right.
Anybody remember what this place was like when the brown algae was there? I mean, tourists stopped coming. No one even wanted to go to the bay. And the water was like chocolate milk. It was disgusting.
That's gross. Did you see any specific recommendations from that you think we should incorporate?
Well, just There's some really good recommendations that were made, but we lost their opportunity unfortunately. So that was this type of thing that we have to be careful of.
So maybe in the governance section, we can add something on
Right.
developing a process for following through with these types of recommendations.
That maybe environmental precedence overrides a pretty lot with some nice trees on it they want to save. I don't think I don't, but if there's a lot that's necessary for preserving water supplies, things like that. We have like the wellhead protection idea. That's something, it's the same idea here, trying to protect a bay or a harbor.
Yeah, so it's kind of like giving priority list to something like CPF.
I think we mentioned before, natural collection basins or kettle holes, they should be preserved. They should be purchased and preserved, not just sit there.
Yeah. Coco, is that still working? I saw the TVs glitch out, but is it still back up and running? I mean, it looked like we're good, just checking. Okay. All right, so should we go on to chapter 8?
We can start with the spreadsheet or the display board summary.
We'll go with the display board summary. There's not a ton of red on there, which is excellent. We'll go through. All right, so I'm going to start with the summary board, chapter 8, on page 14. Page 10. So I'm just going to read through the comments that people have written on the board, and then I will go through the insert. So the first one is include goals to support the findings regarding open space. We do understand those are missing.
It's page 10 of 14.
Oh, yeah, page 10 of 14, sorry. Commercial waterfront is diminishing for shell fishing and other commercial users. Preserve town access to town business. So we actually just did that with the shellfish law. We updated that, so only local commercial fishermen can fish in Shelter Island waters. So that helps preserve that.
Fish or shellfish?
Shellfish.
Hasn't always been that one?
No.
Really?
We
The
were one
only
of
East
the
End
few
town.
East End towns that didn't have.
You'd have to have a DEC permit, but you can
We're
live
saying-
anywhere.
So we're talking about shelter island waters, that's 15 feet and in, 1,500 feet and in, not just inside the captured waterways.
Right.
Okay. Does everybody else have that?
Yeah.
Or surrounding towns?
Yeah,
They
do
do.
the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then there's the comment, Mashamik is probably privately owned and could be sold. It's, if only islanders vote yes, that's,
Subject to a referendum
oh, so, okay.
because of a.
What's that referencing?
Or an overlay called, the causeway, what overlay is that called? No, it's a district, a zoning overlay on Mashomic and a few other places that prevent.
The preserve system.
Oh, the nature preserve system. Got you.
It's totally blank.
Okay.
That's a sub point of the one above it.
Yes.
Mhm. Gotcha. Okay, and then what are the action plans for open space and parks? We'll go over some ideas today because those, for some reason, didn't make it on the board. Mooring slips that remain empty year after year should be reassigned to residents who have boats. That's something that WMAC, I think, was looking into.
I thought they pulled those if they weren't active.
The,
If they expire.
yeah.
And not if you, not necessarily if you don't put a boat on it. That's been, I think, irregularly enforced.
I thought you had to put a boat on it every year, or otherwise you would be for, that's the way I read it, that's the way I understood it.
Right, but I'm not sure that we followed through.
Okay, so it's, again, it's a policing issue.
Yeah, and if you call up and say, I'm sick this, I don't feel, I can't get my boat in this year, the town is forgiving. There's not quite in the competition for mooring that, there is for Condon Dock.
Yeah. Monitor the quality of boat ramps at town landings. Difficulty obtaining a permit to keep dinghies near one's mooring. There's a lack of accessible boat ramps.
Just back to the ramps.
Mhm.
I mean, they really need to be redone,
Yeah.
not even monitored.
Yeah.
Just be updated.
Yeah.
And your father did them
Maintenance.
Eons ago.
35 years ago.
Yeah. And we do have a recommendation to, what is it, upgrade and repair all the access, the shoreline access points.
Where is that recommendation?
It's actually recommendation, it's on page 117.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know why my notes aren't showing that, I must not have saved. But there, for this one, prepare a comprehensive inventory and evaluation of shoreline access points and town landings. That's already been
Yeah.
done, so we have that. So really what it is develop a maintenance program, a maintenance and repair program for all the town access points. Because that's really what we need to be doing. Right. Daniel Lord Road Dock and boat ramp is vital to access waterways, and we need more public docks. Town moorings, more discussion of docks and oversight of town docks that all have access. Establish legal protection of Neshomic and Quinnipiac. And
What
then
does that mean?
so, they're both privately owned.
Mhm.
Neshomic is part of the town parks program, so it's protected in that sense. Quinnipiac is just a privately owned entity like Pearlman. So I don't know
What we could do.
what kind of legal protection they would want over the sale of that property.
Was it historic? I mean, do you have any
Be that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they have moved in the past to carve out several parcels in that property to subdivide it because of economic reasons. They want to be able to sell a lot or whatever it is. So, but I don't think they pursued it. When I was on the planning board, they came to us and they were going to try and cut out 2 lots. And we were going to come up with a subdivision plan for the whole property with open space and everything. And they didn't follow through with it because they found other funding elsewhere when they were down in a situation where that was important. So we have to think about that in the future. They can obviously do that. It'd be nice to maybe meet them halfway and say, can we help you come up with a plan so we can ensure this space is available? So it's something that takes some planning.
Or could we get right of first refusal?
Right of first refusal.
Something like that.
Right.
Which we do actually have in the plan, an option for the town to develop like first refusal for publicly or semi-publicly owned
Right.
lands. I don't know if that would fall under.
But that's in the plan, you say?
That's in the economy chapter, maybe? I think we had, yeah.
How many acres is that?
I don't know. I have to look it up.
Only because they may need to maintain that to maintain the septic area.
That's true.
They might not be able to.
Maybe not be able to.
we did talk about that. I remember that discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a goal 4.5, right of first refusal. Town should require right of first refusal on key lands in nonprofit, public, or semi-public ownership to permanently assure the public that the public interest is protected in the event of a change.
Yeah, I thought we'd.
It's pretty strong.
Mhm.
Open space should include natural habitats and residential areas. House limit house square footage to 4,999 square feet. The building of big houses disrupts landscapes, water, and animals. Stop seaplanes, no seaplanes, also prohibit seaplanes. Preserve Camp Quinnipiac, do not allow what happened to St. Gabe's. and now an outrageous collection of large homes. Need to add goals for open space, and if implementing a no wake zone, then there should be no regulation on boat engine size. So that was on the key findings board.
To answer Jay's question, it's 25.7 acres.
You're about 2 minutes behind.
I didn't say it very loud, but thanks.
Should have told me.
All right, so then on the recommendation board, the comments that we received were that the waterfront revitalization shouldn't be built up, it should be protected. Protect Real Point and Shell Beach, continue the work of the Army Corps. Realistically, they aren't going to help us, we need to do this on our own. That's regarding Shell Beach and Real Point.
A lot of money though.
Yeah, a lot of money. Prohibit excessive powerboat wakes and boat size. This can affect marine businesses. You need to define it more clearly. Some businesses support larger vessels that can't be maintained elsewhere. And then explore the acquisition of a pump out boat. Some say it's a high priority, others say that it's not. So there's multiple points of view. Limit seaplane activity. And then there's the create a marine business zone. There's no clear intention, need more info, clarified, too vague. Could result in expanded traffic
In operation.
and operations. Consider policy for establishment of new docks, as long as new docks don't cause unintended and negative consequences. Consider policies on bulkheads. Consider expansion of programs that support aquaculture, and then someone agrees with that. Ban bulkheads, require living shoreline infrastructure for all coastal areas. Must implement bluff protection regulations, protect the shoreline, update native planting requirements for Cynthia is not native, turn a green space into a community dog park, develop some green spaces into places for the community to come together, parks with benches and pavilions, not just walking trails. Someone else agrees with that. And then more public trash cans. All right, so those were the comments that were on the board. So some of the ones that come up a lot that, you know, is the waterfront revitalization plan. So that was something that I looked at and BJ looked at the other day. And so we pulled it up, and it's a huge endeavor, like a waterfront. It's something that NOAA had recommended because most coastal towns do have revitalization plans. It's about a 3-year process. And it is like an overall like development plan. So some of it is about protecting the shoreline, but a lot of it is about building the shoreline, like
Expanding businesses.
Well, or fortifying them. So, you know, an area that might benefit is Bridge Street, but I don't know if it's a large enough area to warrant the amount of time and money and effort that goes into creating a waterfront revitalization plan. It's like a 3-year process. So it may not be something that we want to recommend.
Is that something that the store owners down there would form their own committee and do the work, supported somewhat by the town?
That's an alternative to an LWRP, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We could,
Because it goes through phases. It's a multi-phased, multi-plan.
You don't think that those businesses should be saved? They should
I'm
be
not saying
abandoned?
they should be saved. The plan allows for something much bigger and broader in fortification. And we know there's been a lot of development pressure. Bridge Street, several businesses already owned by Solaviv. We know you were all sent a very competent analysis of the threat of marina development. I believe it was Kathleen Rose sent it to everybody. It's happening. East Hampton pulled back from its plans. Do we want what happened in Sag Harbor? Do we want what happened in Greenport? This is a question. It's big commercial scale, I think, as opposed to whether we're going to have a handful of
I
local.
don't know, is it that, or is it the fortification so that you don't have to walk through water to get into Blisses?
It's not just that. It's major
Can't it
redevelopment.
just
It's
be
broad.
that?
Can it be just that
Can
though?
it just be that?
It's not just.
Those are major assumptions.
But couldn't be that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll go over what a local waterfront revitalization program consists of. So first, it's developing a plan. So it's a planning process that centers on developing a vision for the future of the waterfront. So where you want to develop it, where you don't want to develop it, where you have existing development that may need support.
This is just a standard, like.
And this is just a standard model.
Do we have to adhere to this particular model?
Yeah, I mean, can't we articulate
No,
the
exactly.
model of?
Exactly.
Just define your own vision.
This would be like a state, this is what the state definition of this would be for potential granting and stuff like that?
Lily,
Oh,
are you suggesting that we let it go into water and fail?
No, I'm not.
But that sounds like it.
I don't think so.
Why are you drawing this?
No,
Large scale-
Excuse me, could audience members please come up to the podium? Because sometimes it's hard to hear them and also identifying themselves.
We do this later after.
Yeah, we'll do this
we've
after.
talked about it. It would be better. Thank you.
all right. So, the purpose of LWRP is to assure that new waterfront development is well designed and sited, provide public access to the water, prevent the displacement of essential water dependent uses, bring land use regulations into better conformity with the objectives of state regulations for the protection of natural areas, and assure that new development is designed to reduce impacts from the natural forces of flooding, erosion, and rising water levels. So that's the purpose of, an LWRP.
So when you develop this plan, is there then a hearing on it? Does it get tweaked?
It's like a
Can people
three-year-long process.
complain
It
about
has
it?
public hearings. You work in coordination. It gets approved on 3 different levels of government. So it goes through the Secretary of State, the federal concurrence from NOAA, the Office of Coastal Management. So there's a whole level of review that it goes through.
There is nothing in this that says you must develop your waterfront.
No.
Our vision could be to preserve the character of Bridge Street and prevent the
Existing
heritage
businesses,
businesses
yeah.
that are there from being washed away with rising sea levels.
Correct.
Period. End of story. So a
Yes.
waterfront revitalization program that we would structure does not ipso facto create new commercial, large-scale development opportunities.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
You have to be very clear with intent and the fact that it's not carte blanche.
right.
There's a lot of assumptions being made. The state, as it has many things, it has a pretty good website. If you just type in local waterfront revitalization plan, New York State's the first one that comes up. It goes through the overview, the purpose. One of the main purposes is to bring land use regulations into better conformity with objectives for the protection of natural areas. So that's one of the main purposes as well, is to protect the natural areas.
But you will have large commercial forces trying to dictate how this goes down, won't you, though? I mean, that's the tension.
I mean, I think that's.
Absolutely.
with
That's-
anything.
Litigation.
Please, stop.
Yeah, please do not speak from the audience. People can't hear you online.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
And once you go through the whole process of developing a plan and getting approval from all the entities, then it does kind of tee you up for funding to help make that happen. So it would be a big undertaking. So we can put it in as something that the town may want to tackle in the future. But it is like a 3-year process, they say, from beginning to end.
That would still go through all the public.
It would go through all the public hearing. I mean, it's a very open.
It's not like it's
engagement
altering
process.
code or anything like that.
It's a
Factor
significant,
may simply be, what do we do with sewage, what do we do with water supply? I mean, how do you provide that for that area for any increased use? So I think that's sort of like,
yeah.
Is that the only area we can think of as just Bridge Street, right?
Well, I mean, the heights, but the heights, may not want to participate in it, we don't have a lot of,
How about the yacht club?
yacht club may benefit
Kind of like
from it,
water
that
in
whole
areas.
area.
I feel like we're in middle
What
school.
about down by?
You can be quiet, I'm gonna ask you to sit in the hallway and listen from there.
Yeah.
It's very rude. We're
It
trying to
really
work.
is incredibly distracting.
You're
You're sitting there and you're making-
Possible to give you a suggestion, we're not.
No, but we'll take public comments at the end. The public can't hear you when you're sitting there now. But to have the three of you sit there and be giggling among yourselves is really so disrespectful, I can't begin to tell you. You can't concentrate on what we're trying to do. You're making faces at us, which is what you're doing. Sorry.
Sure.
So
Would the area by Salt be another area that would fall under
it
this?
was really, we look at our whole
Whole
coastline.
waterfront.
We look at
Yeah.
the whole waterfront and see what areas would need it.
Mhm.
And it would really, yeah, Crescent Beach, because
Yeah.
you see that the water keeps getting higher there. Sometimes there's no beach in a super high tide.
Mhm.
So those are all things that you would look at and that would get evaluated under the plan. We look at like the entire perimeter of the island.
So it would include beaches as well as business
Yeah,
areas?
it would include marshes, it would include everything, because those are areas where you would want to add protections and possibly do things upstream to prevent damage to the marsh. Or even, create higher priority for purchasing certain undeveloped lands that are adjacent to marshes, so then that the marsh can naturally migrate. Things like that. So it really looks at your entire coastline and how to manage it in the future.
So am I correct in saying that the committee and the task force recommending that if this is, pursued, that it's the priority for this is for climate change and protect
Yeah.
current infrastructure, not expanding it by any means, correct?
So it's more an ecological focus than a kind of business development.
Protect what we have,
Developmental.
right?
I'll add that. in.
Actually, you gave a nice summary. Go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
That did get a lot of responses, at least in person, so it's articulating that very clearly, at least the parameters that we're suggesting would be helpful.
We don't have to call it local waterfront revitalization.
Well, it would go under that headline because that's the process that you would use, but it depends on
Too
how you
complicated.
define your scope.
Right.
So that's, it would be,
Is there a grant share for this?
yeah,
Yeah, there are grants.
yeah, there's a lot of grants for this kind of thing.
To help local governments be more resilient to sea level rise, storm surge, flooding.
Mhm.
Really the essence of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it always is seen or heard as a economic revitalization is how it's viewed.
Yeah.
More businesses, more,
In
opportunities for
certain
tourists.
areas,
It could be, yeah,
just not here.
right, exactly, yeah, there you go.
I wonder if Greenport, if that whole Mitchell Park was part of an revitalization plan, it might have been. Yeah.
Well, just like the pier in Sag Harbor was
Yeah,
part of one. I mean, they completely reconstructed that.
right.
So, yeah.
That's the fear, right?
Yeah.
We have to be very clear with the intent and make sure the public's going to have input.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fairly confident that
Yeah.
won't happen.
We're not looking to get the mega yachts in here the way they are in Sag Harbor
Or Greenport.
No.
or Greenport, yeah,
Yeah.
crazy.
I don't like the ones that come in now. You can't use half the town dock.
All right. Let's see. So then the other one that came up a lot in comments was the marina zone. So you want to talk about that?
Yes.
Let's start with a clarification. What exists now are marinas that are business owned. They're zoned in there, and I'm just gonna use Scotland's Harbor and Island Boatyard. And they're in the middle of residential areas. And so that's just how it is. That's because they were there as zoning was developed on Shelter Island, and it seemed the fair thing to do is say pre-existing non-conforming gets to continue. With the caveat that you don't expand and grow and add different services, add different things to it. I mean, you kind of have to, maybe normal growth, but define that, but good luck. And so the idea of this marina zone is as we've seen, Shelter Island has lost some of its long-term family-owned businesses. And so the idea of the Marina Zone was to say, this might be happening in the marinas. They might be up for sale in the next decade. They could then become any business that you're allowed to be in business zones. Does anybody have that list available? It's a pretty extensive list of what you can do with it. And so the thought behind this, and this is what we should discuss, is to narrow it, to say that, no, you can be a marina, and so because you're a marina zone now, or you could be a house. You could go,
Revert
to residential, A or double A.
Skips.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't be anything else. You cannot be the boarding barn.
Is that entirely accurate with just the how setbacks are now?
I mean,
Or would that even be possible if, say, whatever, current marina,
Harbor could.
you're saying change to a different business? I mean,
Change to a different business. I don't know if the building footprint stayed the same.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't have the answer.
there'd be hoops. There would be hoops, certainly Suffolk County Health, all of that to go through, but I don't know.
Would it be
Yeah,
more or less impactful than what's currently there?
right, exactly. So, and it's, the other part of this is heritage businesses. The idea that you're saying you like the marinas, that they're part of Shelter Island's heritage. And this is a way, again, of them to, should they change hands, to not change business use. It's controversial. I mean, and we don't have to touch it. It seems to be, but it seems to be okay. But it is a suggestion that.
Was this what Kathleen DeRosa was talking about?
She brought into it spot zoning, and that's just, from what I've read, it's not spot zoning. It is, and in fact, spot zoning, to me, is saying that you are throwing a zone on something that directly benefits that property. It benefits that property. I don't see how we would say this is a benefit. I'm a little surprised that marinas aren't here tonight, because this narrows the market of buyers. So is that a benefit to someone who might be trying to sell their business in the next decade?
Well, if it's like a big marina chain. that
Yeah,
wants
that's
to,
one.
Expand and bring in the big boats or the, whatever.
Right. Well, there are certain limitations that are just there by nature, in terms of what size boats can come in, and we can say that we are thinking
I think
about.
that was one of the concerns she was raising.
Right.
Turns into.
It sounds to me like she's trying to stop like Sylvester Manor from having worker housing.
Right. Yeah. And we did do away with that idea that we were going to have a floating,
What's the word for it?
institutional zone. It was
No, it was a-
educational.
Over there. So here, I'll read through Kathleen's argument so that I have it, so I'll read it. The proposed marina business zone. I would like to object to the 11th hour surprise edition of several new zoning changes introduced into the draft comprehensive plan in September, and specifically to the proposed marina business zone in Chapter 8, which states create a marina business zone for the 5 areas with small marinas and boatyards: Cockles Harbor, Conklin Creek, Clark's Marina, Bridge Street, and the Island Boatyard. I have, alongside many others, previously expressed concern about the threat posed by the draft comprehensive plan to the Shelter Island environment, and specifically to the 45 miles of fragile shoreline currently protected by the town zoning code via the Nearshore Overlay District in Section 133-12. Today, I would like to express deep concern about the proposed marina business zone and ask you to revisit the comprehensive plan draft to better protect our shorelines, bays, and wetlands from development that could be launched due to this new section, which is effectively so loosely written that is a mandate for zoning changes and an invitation to developers. And please include language prohibiting the redrawing of the nearshore overlay perimeter and any changes or expression of use for these 5 areas. Please also consider protection for town landings used by our community and a sunset provision for these spot zones. Here are 3 reasons why we should be worried. The first is that the threat of development is real. Apparently, as I am sure you know, some or all of these marinas have been rumored to have been approached by Safe Harbor and/or its new multi-billion-dollar parent company, Sun Communities, for acquisition and development. Additionally, we have the Soloviev Company acquiring parts of Bridge Street. Many of you may be familiar with Safe Harbor as the acquirer of neighboring marinas in Greenport and elsewhere. The formula for marina consolidators is to add berths and commercial activities like restaurants and entertainment that build condo housing so as to raise prices, squeeze out local boaters, attract mega yachts, and improve their financial returns. We currently have no zoning protections from the impact that this could have other than the nearshore overlay. Second, all 5 locations sit in extremely vulnerable areas. All of them are in the nearshore overlay for good reason. All of them are in FEMA high flood zones. All of them flood today in a strong nor'easter. All of them, according to sea level rise map prepared by the previous comprehensive plan consultant, will be partially inundated within 18 inches of sea level rise. 3 of the 5 are on Coffles Harbor and are exposed to real point destruction. Several of them are also town landings for this community. These 5 locations are absolutely last place commercial development should happen. And third, these marinas currently sit in grandfathered small business spot zones amidst residential neighborhoods where expansion will be problematic. Use needs to be restricted, not expanded. While most of our marinas and boatyards have been good neighbors, and to be clear, the concern stems from potential new billion-dollar corporate owners, nuisances from big marinas are well known and documented in the zoning codes of nearby towns. A quick survey of Southampton, East Hampton, and South Hill marina zoning catalogs the problem: pollution from boat sewage, fuel, and boat repairs, noise disturbances, excessive water consumption, dredging, environmentally damaging earthworks, light pollution, dark skies, bothersome traffic, and need for screening and destruction of wetlands and waterways. This is why Southampton, after many lawsuits, removed planned development district, that's what it was known as. That's the part. Zoning for marina districts from its zoning code. East Hampton did not, and one only needs to look at the Sag Harbor waterfront to see the result. In sum, the marina business zone, as currently written, is not in the public interest. If we don't want a day trip or party zone on Bridge Street, mega yachts in Coffles Harbor, and condos at the Island Boatyard, we need to immediately revise the language in Chapter 8, create a marina business zone to sustain the nearshore overlay, prohibit expansion and change of use, and protect town landings for residents at these 5 marina locations.
Coffles Harbor, by the way, is limited by the real point entry. So one suggestion in that you just read, Meg, sunset non-conforming uses. I mean, that seems draconian to me. Sunset, draconian. I just can't, I don't know if we want to consider that, but to sunset non-conforming uses, that means at some point you wake up and the marina is not allowed to be there anymore? That's really what it means.
Don't pick just one thing.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. These are 2 that I just think that, and then that we have no protection other than the fact that, we have the wetlands restrictions. But I think we do have other protections that, namely the expansion. I don't know how condos could go in to a marina. The fear that was enumerated there. I don't know how that could happen. We can't have condos. We have zoning that says no condos.
The proposal here does stipulate that the zone might consider which businesses and the scale of which would not be appropriate in such a district. So I think it's being very careful to spell out that if you want to say this, it's not a free-for-all, or we're not going to turn into Sag Harbor, I guess. Or you just have to stipulate that very clearly. And then have zoning and stick to it.
Right. I thought this was a good suggestion, but I'm also, happy to leave it at B, in B.
It's my understanding that those areas, once upon a time, were zoned as marinas.
So too.
And this is anecdotally as told to me, there was issues over, certain people, businesses going too far, and they rezoned them. They're not conforming to help curtail expansion and pollution, whatever may or may not have allegedly gone on. So that already happened.
Right. And did that work? Yeah. I don't know, I know the evidence is lacking.
But if you want to explore that, what is the intent of creating another marina zone and bringing it back to that?
For me, it's
do what we have right now, which is non-conforming uses, which limits expansion. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
That's what I'm saying. I think this would be a worthy thing to explore further. by a future town board. That
I
being
don't think they should
said,
go away by any means,
Yeah.
but again, I don't think anyone wants to see
Right.
large-scale expansion by any.
right, or even small scale.
So when she says sunset, does that mean if it were to change hands, then that would sunset? Or there's a date and time on a sunset provision?
You could arrange
Open
it,
interpretation.
it's open to interpretation. So you could have it in code that should the property change hands, it would resort back to,
Or a major review?
yeah, or you'd need to come for a special permit for a change of use variance and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the marina so for example, Cockles Harbor, it's not just the marina that's B zoned, it's that entire block. So it's not one parcel that's zoned something different. It's usually a section or an area.
Mm,
Like Bridge Street, it's all of Bridge Street. It's not just one entity. So it's not really spot.
The added layer is site plan review,
Right.
of protection, so.
Right, and if you did create it, you could, add stricter setbacks and regulations within the town code, but we all know over time,
Mhm.
that could degrade.
Mhm,
It's a lot easier to change it once it's there.
mhm.
Well,
So,
and I think another concern, just in reading this, there's, the part where it says it may be appropriate to create marine business zone to support marine-related businesses, which require special considerations because they're in environmentally sensitive areas, almost makes it sound like you want to like loosen restrictions
does
so that
sound
they
like you-
can.
yeah.
And I
yeah,
don't think
Yeah.
that's the intention
No.
of what you had in mind. So I feel like this kind of, it sounds like you should be making exemptions because of their sensitive location to allow
Did
them
we
to do
reach
things
out
that
to
you
any of
would.
them in any of our focus groups? I don't recall personally, but I mean, I'd be interested to hear what are they running up against?
Mhm.
Just trying to think, I remember maybe a couple of the employees have spoken in the past, but I'd really like their input on, do they feel, overly restricted or vice
we
versa?
should invite them for the next meeting. Just a quick email to them all, Coco, maybe.
I only remember one employee coming to the Legion Hall, but it was more about the
Boat
weight,
size
the boat
limitation.
size.
Yeah.
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 I feel like none of I haven't heard of any of the marinas having plans to do any expansion or growth or development.
But I could imagine, I mean, her letter there is very persuasive to me.
Mhm.
Because we see what happens in these
Yeah.
other South Fork towns, and as they get turned away from them, or they do them, now where else are they gonna look? They're gonna look right here.
Right.
Be one generation away
Right.
from.
Exactly,
Somebody
and they've
sell
got
that.
tons of money, so if you're a struggling family and you're ready to retire and leave your marina, and someone's offering you megabucks for it,
Yeah.
you're gonna go for
It's
it.
hard to say no to megabucks. It's hard to say no to megabucks. So that may not be something that we want to look into. You might want to keep it B zoned where it has its own restrictions and marinas are allowed, but not
No B zone,
necessarily.
Would that be?
This suggestion,
Yeah, but B1, I mean.
Yeah, keep it in the existing. Keep it
I think
status quo.
if you.
would that protect it though?
Well, if you made it stricter, if you made it clear that, there's no multi-family housing, there's no,
Hotels,
yeah,
restaurants.
No expansion of
yeah,
use.
no expansion of use. So for instance, Cockles Harbor does not have a restaurant. It can't have a restaurant. It doesn't have one, it can't have one. That you could almost tailor it to the properties, the various properties. Right, what's there and what's
It seems
allowed.
like a better way to go from a protection standpoint.
Yeah. But I think we maybe need to bring the players in to just at least hear their input.
Okay,
Good idea.
all right, so I'll just highlight this as something that we need to circle back to. We get some feedback from them. I feel like if they were having issues, we would have heard. Like we would have gotten complaints.
Negotiations with a multi-big bucks. They're not publicly
Megabucks.
talking about this.
Multi-megabucks.
Exactly.
Big Daddy Warbucks, please.
Okay. But are people leaning towards eliminating the option or keeping, like, how are you feeling about it?
I'm sort of thinking like what Sean said, like, don't fix what ain't broke.
Mhm.
I have enough with the non-conforming. You ask yourself, okay, so how is it lacking right now? You can go
Right.
the other way and say,
I think that's
you're
what-
not getting.
That's the concern is there any loophole that this could go south?
And if not, maybe we can just buffer that up anyway.
Well, and if
Yeah,
it
you don't
used
have
to
to change
exist and it was taken away,
And that's just.
maybe we don't want to give it back, but yeah.
It's funny, but there was no other way to enforce it other than to change it, if that's,
Yeah.
force,
I just think if we're going to create something new
yeah.
or expand something, we need to have a clear intent in what we're trying to accomplish with
Yeah.
that. I guess that's my.
All right, I'm leaving. Sorry, hard stop.
So I'm gonna cross it out for now.
Yes.
That's a good idea.
Taking it out. Okay.
But we are inviting them next
Yeah.
meeting just to kind of just get
We'll
their
reach out to them
perspective.
and see if they have anything
Strong
strong
feelings about it.
where these are. All right. Let's see. What were some of the other ones that
Is she leaving the phone?
she did? Yeah, you it's taller. She might have already gone, that might.
Or it might be her. She'll find out soon.
She'll sort it. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go to the Heights.
So are we moving on to the next set of comments from the Heights? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay,
What date was that?
yeah, that's,
Yeah. October 13th? So the one I'm going to do first is on page 2 of theirs.
Chapter 8, number 26?
Yes, number
The
26.
first email or the second email?
You know, I'm not sure, because I have mine printed.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of two is they're marked.
Okay, we're going over that section first.
We're going one of two first.
Yeah, so comment 26. Did you find it?
No,
Oh, okay.
can you get the time? One of these.
Yeah,
Which
it's in
one?
that, if
The
you.
lower one? No, this
You know,
one.
I don't know.
This
It's a
one.
clear, yeah, I have them printed in hard copy, so. So the first one is the LWRP sounds like spot zoning. How is this different from Greenport's overdeveloped waterfront? What role would the ferry operators have? So it's the waterfront revitalization plan would be however we were to define it.
Which we've already talked about.
Yeah. And then the next comment, comment 27, the marina zone should consider which businesses, uses, and the scale of which would not be appropriate in such a district. The current might consider is not definitive or acceptable. Please also confirm that the Shelter Island Yacht Club will not be zoned as a marina.
What's the difference? What are they?
I don't know. I mean, they behave like a marina, just a private marina.
Good question.
Operation,
I-
fixing boats. Marinas. fix
Repair?
boats, they're chandlers. They
Okay.
repair.
Don't they fix boats at the yacht club?
No,
They don't like put sails up and put masts up and paint bottoms and,
I think it's a different echelon, I mean.
no, it's different? Really? All that work is done someplace else?
yeah.
Wow.
I think small repairs are done, if
And small
someone,
boats.
breaks it,
Yeah.
that type of thing. But the owner himself will be doing it mostly or have it done, but it's not like,
So not,
no one's coming in there, I don't think.
All right, and then for the next one from the Heights, it's comment number 13.
Are we looking at the next email?
Yes.
So that was two of two.
2 of 2.
So we're back to one of two.
Okay. So this comment reads, the Heights suggests that the town introduce new mandatory setbacks from a bluff. So restrict building on bluffs, simplify beach stair structures, and ensure proper revegetation and debris cleanup to manage erosion after disturbing a bluff.
That should be a part of the permit process.
Yes, but the thing is, we have no regulations on the books for building on a bluff or into a bluff.
Mhm.
So
Not in the New York State building code? There's got to be stuff for engineering that.
oh, there is stuff for engineering it, but we don't have anything as far as restrictions or regulations go.
Yeah, but why would we? There's a building code. You're
Yeah.
going to try to duplicate something that's constantly updated. I don't think you should mess with that.
What's their actual complaint? Is it revegetation? Is that what's not happening, or they?
They want
Setbacks.
mandatory setbacks from a bluff, like they want you to be 100 feet back from the edge of a bluff before you do any construction.
Makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah. Restrict building on bluffs, simplify beach stair structures, because, you know, on these really steep ones, you get these crazy zigzag stairs. Ensure proper revegetation and debris cleanup to manage erosion. So, I mean, we could recommend a addition to the code when it comes to bluff construction, making a setback from the top, things like that. Because as the bluffs erode, you know, you get landslides and.
Right. Those bluffs used to be grass
Yeah.
Or sand.
and sand. And sand.
A lot
White
of
Hill
it.
was White Hill because it was sand.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
You know, they have bulkhead pretty much around most White Hill now.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see how much
Yeah, that's-
erosion stop.
That's why Crescent Beach is less sand now. It's getting.
It's gonna get
more
choked.
gravel. It needs to feed it, so.
Yeah, your feeding might come from trucks from Shell Beach.
Yeah.
Could I just interject a question?
Yes.
So this chapter 8 has parks and open space, but none of the recommendations deal with that. So we have to kind of, I guess,
Yes.
add sets, and that's what you sent us, correct? Got it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Because we realized somehow they got lost in the shuffle and never made it into the
weren't in there.
document.
Because a couple people
So-
commented upon that.
Exactly.
Good.
So I do have some that we can discuss.
Okay, great.
Public hearing, it was answered.
Yeah, it was, for some reason, when Noah did it just never made it in. I don't know how.
So where would we add that bluff stipulation?
That's what I was just looking at. It could go into habitat restoration measures for part of it.
I mean, it also seems like a zoning chapter
Yeah,
kind
zoning.
of thing.
Yeah,
Maybe in the near shore?
yep.
Yeah.
So those are the comments from the Heights. Look for these.
I am a huge fan of limiting off-road vehicles on beaches. That is like a plague on the South Shore,
Yeah.
sitting on the LIE or something like that.
We get a little bit of it here, but not too much.
Too much.
Not too much. There's only a few
It's
places.
really only for fishing.
Yeah.
That's different because they just go down there, then they're fishing. But these
Yeah.
are people just driving up and down the beach.
But they allow that, that's the time.
I know, which is
They
crazy.
allowed like joy driving to the beach to go surfing and all those kind of events.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty
We don't have
limited
that.
here.
It's different, yeah. I wonder how many permits we can have out. I mean, not a lot,
It's
right?
not many.
Not many.
It's not many.
We don't.
Rarely used.
Yeah.
Is that a permit that has to be displayed on the vehicle like they do on the South Fork?
There's a sticker.
There's a sticker?
Used to be a sticker.
Yeah, PD gets a list as well.
Yeah. Real Point, that used to be available for people. Now is it closed?
It's closed now.
Gate, did they?
There's a few access points, quite a few of them that have been closed to vehicles.
Okay.
Like bootleggers as well,
Right.
it's been closed off.
Yeah.
You used to be able to go down there.
To some of the guys, they actually, I think, issued a key
I think that happened years ago, but whether it's still,
20 years ago.
yeah.
It's been that long.
Yeah.
I think they issued a key for fishermen and to some hunters that wanted to launch boats right there.
Right.
I think it was more popular back when you could hole seine.
right?
Mhm.
Which,
Not allowed to do anymore.
we used to harvest eelgrass all the time that way, pick it up and dry it and use it.
It's almost 8 o'clock. Do you guys want to go to public comment, or do you want to go through some more points?
I would say public comment.
We still have-
So we're saving the open space for next time.
Yeah, we can go over open space next time.
I just got that today, I think.
Yeah.
It'd be good to be able to read
And
it.
if you have additional comments, recommendations to add to that, put them all together and we can do an email chain so people can add to it. All right, so we're going to pick up this discussion at our next meeting, but I'm going to open it to the public. Does anyone have a comment? Lily, come up to the podium.
I have a
Come up to the
question
podium.
about the open.
Come up to the podium, please.
Yes, I'm trying to get there. Lily Hoffman. First, I have a question about the open space that was distributed. What is it? Is it an addendum?
No, they're ideas that we're going to talk about for potential goals and recommendations.
For this chapter 8.
It is
Trying
chapter.
to be added as recommended.
Well, after we discuss it,
We're
yes.
going to discuss
Thank you.
them
I
as I
didn't understand what you. Just one brief comment. I certainly appreciate the discussion of the attempt to put an ecological perimeter or put restrictions on whether it's marina districts or whether it's use of the New York State waterfront revitalization program. But you must be aware, I'm not the lawyer in the room, that the moment these larger plans with broader meanings and parameters are put into place, we as a town are subject to litigation from businesses that want to expand, from businesses that want to come in and buy in. So it just, we have to, I don't know if we can stipulate restrictions that will protect us. And I think the little bit of research that I think Kathleen did for her paper that you very nicely read points out that there's been a lot of litigation in Southampton, which led them to pull back their plans. And also Southold has had a lot of litigation. So I just want to mention, it may not be as easy to go into some of these spot zones, if you don't like the word, marina waterfront revitalization programs, and establish our own means for attempting to restrict usage or change of usage. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Lori?
Good evening, Lori Beard Raven. I'm going to go back to the beginning. It's really hard to comment. I know you're trying to do your work, but it's hard to comment when you have to go back to the beginning of your meeting to make comments as you go through it. But when you were discussing the wetlands and extending, a hard line on the 100-foot, the CAC has been making that recommendation and discussing that for over a year now. So that's something that you might want to talk to the CAC in terms of what their feelings are, because they've been publicly saying that for quite a while.
Yeah.
The second thing is PEC protection area. I want to talk about that just a little bit, because when a property, for example, is bulkheaded, and even a non-jurisdiction letter is issued, or if a DEC permit is issued, the DEC will issue that permit or that NJ letter, and they'll talk about a protection area for construction. So they'll make a recommendation that construction they should have a 10 or 15 or 20-foot protection area, whatever the DEC never writes these letters exactly the same. That's one of their issues. They constantly change the rules on you. So they're not always consistent. Most of them are, but not all. Anyway, the point on that is if they issue an NJ letter or a permit, they'll say you can't build we recommend this, I'm just gonna make something up, 10 feet. But people are putting applications in and they're building right on that 75-foot line. And there's no teeth to what the DEC recommends versus what the town allows. So the town's saying, well, you can build right up to that 75-foot line, but the DEC is saying, well, yeah, you can, but we think you should leave a 10-foot buffer zone. And that, for a reason for that is exactly what you were discussing earlier, John, in terms of room for construction material to get in. Because if you're only building up to the 75-foot line and you're not leaving a buffer zone, that equipment's gonna have to go past that 75-foot line closer to the water in order to build that structure that they're trying to build, whether it's a pool or a retaining wall or a patio or a foundation or whatever it is, because they've not left that 10-foot to get the equipment in. So, that 100-foot would actually help that, because then you're ensuring that you're not getting any closer than that 75-foot line, if that's really where you really want to be. So you have to decide where you really want to be and making sure that line, that whether it's equipment or whatever it is, doesn't go over that line.
Right. Makes sense.
The next thing I want to talk about, which many people may or may not know, is there's an insurance evaluation rating system that the town goes through about once every 5 years or so. And it's done through the building department. And what that is a survey that's done through the building department, and they look at the town code. They look at wetlands permits, they look at how many you issue, they look at what you're issuing them for, they look at violations, they look at the town code, they look at many things. I would suggest that you want somebody to go to the building department, have a look at that and understand that. And the reason I'm recommending that is because that insurance evaluation is a rating, and that rating is for the entire town. And that rating affects all of our insurance cost. So the insurance companies then go in, national insurance companies go in and look at what the town of Shelter Island is rated for. And, one time it was not rated very well, it was a 6. I think we might be at an 8 now. And the last one was done in 2016. If I remember correctly, around there. I think it might have been 2017. Anyway, that insurance rating and what they're looking for is very important, because if you get a bad rating, that's going to affect everybody's insurance rating. But many things that you look at where people go, oh, I don't want to be more restrictive. It's important that we are more restrictive, because
That's where I thought you were going. Yeah, okay.
because at the end of the day, it does affect everybody. It affects everybody
The
town-wide.
exemptions, how many exemptions are given, how many violations are overlooked.
There's a lot of information
hurts.
in that report and what they asked for. And that's all done, just like the DEC comes in and inspects the building department's files for compliance. It's a similar situation.
So Meg, I think the pre-disaster hazard mitigation plan identifies about 9 homes, I think, that are below the 10-foot elevation, where the town could actually put together a program to mitigate flooding issues for those properties, get a grant, and then that would probably increase our rating that Laura was talking about.
But look at all the pieces to that rating, because I think it may affect some of the decisions that you're making, not only for wetlands, but for some of the other areas of the comp plan. And I think that's, it's an important document. So, because we don't want to get a bad rating. Nobody wants to pay more for insurance, and we're already having issues with insurance companies pulling out. And the last discussion I had with the national insurance agency was that they were looking to pull out. They don't like coastal communities now. And that includes Long Island. They've got all of Long Island flag. So whatever happened in Florida is going to get worse for us as well. So the more protections and restrictions we put in terms of development and protecting our coastline, the better off we're gonna be in the long run.
I like that.
Is some of that based on when the building codes were strengthened for wind protection?
No, Jay, they don't look at that.
Really?
No. And what's also interesting that they don't look at is the, which I'm expecting, although there hasn't been any talk of it, just to be clear, but, you know, the FEMA maps, the flood zone maps have not been updated since September 2009. So,
State's out of mind.
yeah, well, but you know it's coming, and when it comes, it's gonna be big and it's gonna be scary. Because, you know, as we all know, our coastline changes, and it's certainly changed since 2009. But those were our flood zones now. And chapter 60 of the town code attempts to do some of that when that chapter was created. But unfortunately, I think that chapter is being overlooked. It's certainly being overlooked. It has been overlooked for years within the wetlands approval process with the town. So we might want to have another look at chapter 60 and what's in there, because that particularly addresses construction in the FEMA flood zone areas, especially for new construction. It doesn't talk about, you know, the way the town code is written now for wetlands. You know, if you've got an existing structure, you know, you're encouraged, you're allowed to maintain what you have. It's just not add new things. So, all right, the next thing I want to talk about is, you know, some of the comments that were made in chapter 8. Most of your other towns, and if you look at Southold in particular, as an example, have sections of their town code that deal with bluffs and construction restrictions on properties that have bluffs. And the reason that the Heights put that in there is because we are seeing some erosion from construction very close to the bluff edge. I'm not going to mention names or property numbers, but, you know, it's a problem. And one of the other things that most people don't realize is that one side of the island, and I don't see this mentioned anywhere in the comprehensive plan, is called the coastal erosion hazard area, which is a more restrictive flood zone than a regular flood zone. And that has to do with how the water is coming in as it approaches the island, and most of that's on the side of the island where Hay Beach is. But you can Google that.
It's based on wave height.
Yeah, it's based on wave height and how the water is moving and how the water moves in and to the shoreline. So your coastal erosion areas are much stronger on one side of the island versus another. So based on wind and water driven. So that's something that you may want to look at because, you know, maybe, you know, right now we always try to fit everything in one box. You know, if it's the same size shoe for everybody. Maybe that's something that you don't want to do. I don't know. But it's something that you think you need to look at to evaluate.
Where was that discussed? You mentioned it.
It's not discussed.
No, not in the plan, but you said that there's
It's New York DEC.
it's the New York DEC.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
called the CHEA line. CEHA, coastal erosion.
Thank you.
Hazard area.
And that's where you,
The
the east coast of the island is more prone to erosion, because it's more open to.
Yeah,
You can
it's larger wave action.
Yeah, right.
Coming in.
As Jay said. Okay.
It'll show you
That's interesting.
where that CHEA line is on Shelter Island.
Which could perhaps generate a more nuanced setback and zoning based on where you are on the island. Interesting.
And affect our marinas too, probably.
Anyway, so those are some of the comments based on some of the things that you talked about tonight. I guess we'll continue as we continue in our areas of it. Outside.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think town engineer could probably help us with some of that.
Yeah. Kim?
Hi, Kim Nolan. I might have misheard this, but did you guys decide just to take marina districts out of it right now?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's,
We are going to talk to them next meeting, but
yeah,
yeah, it seems like it's fraught
In that way.
with misinterpretation.
okay.
Confusion.
But not so with the local water revitalization program, right? That stays in on some basis?
Right now it does, but I'll go back and look at it. We'll look it up more, look into it and see what we think and come back.
I don't think anybody wants to not help protect those businesses down at Bridge Street.
Oh, I totally agree.
But
I'm
we're
just-
not,
I'm
we're not
just
looking
asking
for
for
the south side to come here and expand and turn to something that we're not. But if there's something that would help elevate the roads or some program that would help maintain, what we have, I think that's what we
What
want.
Sean said is absolutely true, which is if you are wanting to make a change, the intent has to be clear and specific.
Mhm.
Right.
I'm just.
But under
getting
this
clarification.
name, you can get funding for it, whereas if that's the program that could generate some genuine funding. You just have to articulate very clearly what you mean by revitalization here.
Right.
I did add notes to strengthen the language, saying with a focus on preservation and protection of the shoreline.
And I think, all that's good. I'm just like, as I said, these are just clarification. I didn't even bring any notes with me. And then the other thing was on the irrigation. Once again, we had the same conversation tonight that we did previously, which basically is, there are going to be some new restrictions, intent to restrict in the plan, all of which makes sense. And I'm just asking again that other than these specific exemptions, which we already have in chapter 82, and maybe, you've brought up another Suffolk County law tonight, Meg, that really repeats those same three things, which is ag, nurseries, and golf courses, that otherwise these restrictions would apply across the board, including commercial. I'm just trying to get clarification.
I mean, it'll depend on the board who implements the law, but
course.
yeah, the goal is to restrict well-drawn irrigation.
Right.
Like there might be a strengthening of collection. A strengthening of being able to collect water on your property and then reuse that water. It's not then well-driven.
Okay.
But I think Pam's question was whether this would extend to businesses other than the three mentioned. Would they be under the same rule that the private homeowner would be? Is that what, I think that was your
Yes,
intent?
that is exactly
have to
right,
be.
Mindy, exactly
I
right.
mean, if you're eliminating well-drawn irrigation as a whole, then that would be the.
But there's no counter law that somebody could come back and say, but New York State says it's
Right.
okay. In other words, it's only those three that are covered.
Yeah.
Got it.
So what do you say to White Oak that is operating a nursery that needs to water the plants that he's selling? What do you tell them?
They're covered by the exemptions.
They're
Yeah,
already covered.
So when we're talking about commercial, what do you have in mind?
like hotels
Everything
and.
else,
Hotels?
Banks.
Yeah, so if they're watering their lawn, yeah, or restaurants that have a lawn in front of them or something like that. So I guess it would pertain to the big hotels on the island too.
Right. Yeah, that's why I can't really think of many other businesses that, other than, restaurants use water excessively, but that's usually in their kitchens, not necessarily for irrigation.
I mean, how much water does Sunset Beach use on a summer day?
Really irrigate.
How many gallons is West Neck Water providing them? Are we talking?
They're our biggest customer.
Yeah. I know they're paying for it, but, they also are pumping that from the other side of the hill over there.
They don't have any,
They don't
they
irrigate.
don't irrigate anything out that I know of.
It's not irrigating, they're just using it for.
They just use it
Use
for
it,
water, yeah.
But they're not restricting that.
No, I'm just saying, are we concerned about the quantity that they do use and how that may impact
Yes,
elsewhere?
that's
I mean,
getting
It's
monitored.
just something that would be.
Yeah, because if it affects the West Neck Water District,
Right.
other members of that district, then that'd be a problem. It hasn't so
And
far.
just throwing this out there is that if they want to increase their number of diners or increase their consumption, and the existing system can't provide that water for them now, what happens? Does Suffolk County Water Authority come in and say, we need another well because our biggest customer wants more water? It's a
Well, they would probably do something like they did with Leon, where they force them to put in a massive holding tank and they can only.
They have a holding
They have a
tank now.
holding tank now.
Yeah.
Do.
When West Neck Water District was created and Sunset Beach came in from Krause's, they had to put in either 1 or 2 holding tanks that they have to fill.
At night.
If I'm wrong, they
Yeah.
have to fill in the middle of the night. They can't be, because the first summer they were in operation, we lived right above them. They would draw down so much water in the middle of a Saturday that everybody else on the system was literally getting brown water out of their taps.
Yeah.
So the then West Neck Water District mandated that they had to put in holding tanks that had to be filled in off hours. I'm sure that that's still the case.
It is.
Lori?
Sorry, just want to contribute to this discussion just a little bit. The DEC requires an annual water conservation report filed by all public water systems. And in that report, they continually press those public water systems to be, add new, what are you doing for conservation measures? Each year, they want more. So, is it enough? Probably not. And, one of the things that can be done that I see in many places, only because I've worked in many island communities and other states and countries where water is an issue. Many of those locations require additional measures for water conservation, which would actually help these public water companies do their conservation reports. For example, if you had a restaurant and you had ice machines, you would be required to have a recirculating ice machine to recirculate the water. So there's different ways and methods to do that with fixtures and appliances that conserve even more water. And you can find a lot of that stuff, it's all online. But off the top of my head, you see a lot of those water conservation methods in California, you see them in the Caribbean, you see them in the European islands and Greece and other places where people have lots of issues with saving every drop of water to try and, be more conservation driven. So we're just behind those times. So I think we need to maybe consider some of that stuff because, Suffolk County Water Authority, even though they're managing West Neck Water System, they still have to file that report every year.
Yep.
So, and every year they want a little bit more. So you can't just file the same report year after year without making improvements to it.
Right.
It's hard to talk about, well, it's not hard to talk about it, but the efficiency of those fixtures without looking at like public spaces where we need to be recharging on our public lands
Right.
for water.
Needs to be a bigger.
Right. We need a big effort there.
Related but unrelated, the waste recovery system at Sunset Beach, do they have IA systems?
Yes. No, there's not an AI up on top of that thing?
I know they rebuilt new thing.
I don't believe so.
No, they do not.
They do not? Really? Okay.
I know we have the highest level of toxins and pharmaceuticals and everything come right from that beach right there. It's the worst on the island, or actually probably worse in Suffolk County, was flagged as a bad area.
Really?
Yeah, right off the beach there. So I just wondering, what do we do about that? Is that something we should look at? It's in the it's in the water.
What are they with the prison?
I haven't heard anything about the.
Well, the pretty one, they put it on the IA
The
system.
Prydwen has full IA systems on
Yeah.
every building. So they did upgrade. They upgraded and Leon upgraded when they changed of use.
That's why I recommended in the last meeting to consider the loophole and for the commercial to upgrade them to IA systems. For
Right, so right now they're prohibited, right?
What?
They're prohibited in the grant program, right?
No.
I thought they were
They
prohibited.
cannot get a grant.
They can't get a grant.
They can't get a grant, but.
They can't get a grant, but they're allowed to upgrade.
Right.
It's just without grant money. Anybody else from the public? Ellen?
Okay, so I just want to put my 2 cents about this local waterfront revitalization plan. It's difficult to say it. That's something that was never discussed at CPAC. It only came out with the draft from the consultants. They found some program, New York State program. Oh, sounds great, let's put it in, okay? And the way it's described here in the document and just listening to you guys talking about it, like you only have very cursory idea what that is and what Pandora box are you opening, okay? And so I would suggest that if this town doesn't have good understanding what it is, it should take it out, okay? Because the implications of it should be thoroughly understood, and I don't think they are. Because theoretically, this program is about protecting coastline, but it's also about development, okay? Once you put it in requirement to develop this plan, if then down decides, actually, this is what we do, okay? Developers are gonna come at you at the town with like a ton of bricks with all kinds of lawyers, and they'll force you to do what they want to do, okay? And all the things like marinas, any coastal area and so forth, this is extremely valuable for developers, okay? And you need to be very aware of not doing something that you cannot undo later on. Okay, so that's one my comment. The other comment is on the comments from the Planning Commission. They strongly suggested, they're not mandating, they cannot mandate anything, okay? That you develop full environmental EIS, okay? So it's not like, you're gonna go to step 5 on the SECRA 12-step plan and exit and say negative declaration. They strongly suggested full EIS. And given that, I missed the last meeting, so I don't know what's happening with the public water, but right now the draft plan, provides for public water island-wide over the next 10 years. That's out? Okay, so then wastewater, what about wastewater? So things like this definitely require EIS. Anything,
Wastewater district out.
you do it.
Yes.
Wait, no, we still say a district
We
only
said
for
water
the.
districting,
Water.
but not
And we're gonna
wastewater.
clarify that
Okay, just-
under the home rule.
Right.
So we still have public district island-wide for home rule?
Mhm.
So I don't quite understand it because this town board brought in Suffolk County Water Authority, okay? Allegedly to do just Suffolk County water system or water district. And now it seems to be like some kind of a monster that we need some water districts to protect ourselves from it. So is this the only solution? We also don't understand what the water district or sewer district means, okay? What are the implications of it?
We went over it at the last meeting, but West Neck Water District was already an established water district. And so the town contracted Suffolk County Water Authority to run that water district specifically.
Yes.
So because the rest of Shelter Island is outside of a district, we don't have a water district for the rest of the island. The Heights has their district, Deering Harbor has their district, West Neck, right? Anything not in a district is by default the water district of Suffolk County Water Authority. So
That's good.
says the state, says the county. That's Suffolk County Water Authority's mandate.
So why did you bring Suffolk County water?
That's not the issue.
That's not the issue. So the
And
issue
the
is,
monster that's taking over the island.
but
No,
that's,
do that. Legally, you can absolutely do it.
yeah,
We're trying to
legally,
control
that's their
that.
mandate. Because they have any area not districted is de facto Suffolk County Water Authority's water district. So if we create a water district that encompasses the areas of the island not currently districted, now we have jurisdiction over that area, not Suffolk County Water Authority. So they would have to negotiate with us if they wanted to put in a water system in that district, which right now they don't have to do.
They had to negotiate for West Neck to take over that maintenance. They had to negotiate with the town and the board, the West Neck Water Board, to do that. But otherwise, if you're not in a district, if, I don't know, 8 homeowners on a street decide that their wells are no good, they can get in touch with Suffolk County Water and they can figure out how to get them water.
Basically, you brought in like 10-headed monster.
No.
It was already here serving Deering Harbor. So no, we didn't bring it in. The fact that we don't have a district to protect our territory just gives them the authority to do what they want to do if the public demands that they do it. So if you have Silver Beach and the majority of Silver Beach demands that they want public water, and they have enough people to lobby Suffolk County Water Authority, and Suffolk County Water Authority can create the infrastructure or acquire land to put in the wells that they would need to then provide water to Silver Beach, they can do that because it's outside of our jurisdiction. We don't have a district.
Okay, so if the plan for 10, over 10 years, develop public water island-wide is out,
Yes.
then you're taking out the plan from WAC, right? Which calls for
No.
exactly that. No, but that's what it calls for.
No, because we're not actually, so you weren't, watch the video from the last meeting because we discussed this. And we discussed the fact that the plan doesn't call for public water at every house on the island, island-wide. That's not what it's calling for. It's saying public water where water is demanded and where people have lost potability. So it's not realistic to think that every single house on the island is going to be on a public water
That's what the plan says. All
No,
I'm
it doesn't
saying is-
actually say that.
You need to read the plan very carefully. If you
Yeah, I
read it,
did.
there's a nuance to it which says only if necessary, and that's the key
Oh,
point.
so that's all it.
That's the key point, is what they're saying, only if it's necessary. So
And the last question I have is the consultants that if, our understanding is the EIS is required in this case, and planning commission strongly suggests this, okay? So if you're gonna have consultants to tell you whether it's needed or not, shouldn't there be a different consultant than the one who's developing the comprehensive plan?
No, not
Because you
necessarily.
need to have some independent consultant that
No,
I think it was suggested some time ago even.
no,
Stephen Kelly suggested that there's a
it's
different.
not necessary.
It's not.
No.
And why is that not?
Because typically it's the same people who develop the plan who would do the EIS for it or the secret review. Because they're familiar with the plan, so they understand the intention and the impact of it.
You're paying an awful lot of money. We're paying an awful lot of money to get somebody else, a new firm, up to speed when somebody else already has all of the background.
Yeah, but as soon as you have, it's not just about money. As soon as you have an independent
But
verification.
they're governed by laws, right? It's
They're
not, they just
governed by
can't
law,
give it a
no.
rubber
Yeah.
stamp because they did it.
Yeah, no, it's exactly, yeah, yes, Wendy.
Yeah, well,
That's what you're.
we're right to you, what the client wants.
we're there also to watch over their shoulder. We're all going to be there. We're all going to be witness of this and be involved. We don't like what we see, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're in a vacuum. And another, back to your point, as far as, because and if you look at the WEC plan, it says develop this system as necessary. All the more reason why we need to come up with a water district for the island. That way we have control. If without this water district, we don't have any control. And that can take place. Your worst nightmare can happen. The only way to stop it is by having this island-wide water district.
And the district is going to take a while to create because it has to go for public referendum. It has to be voted on. It's a long process. It's not like we just pass a resolution, hey, we're a district. It's much bigger than that. So
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I hear you always have an answer to some issue. And it seemed to me like if we didn't have Suffolk County Water Authority, we wouldn't have a need for the public water district.
But what's next water does?
We needed it,
So
and it
what's
was
that water
already
look
there
like?
with Daring Harbor. They were already servicing Daring Harbor for way before us.
Yeah.
And the trouble is even if they weren't here at all, if there's no water district, Suffolk people individually could call up Suffolk County and wherever it's like Hauppauge and say, we're desperate out here. And then they could just come in. They wouldn't even have to negotiate with the town.
Yeah.
But they could have hired anybody to come manage that. And then the people would talk to those people and say, well, how can you get us water too? It doesn't matter who it is. The people that need water. And they're going to reach out wherever they can to try to find it. And it could be Suffolk County Water. It could be Nassau County Water District. It could be anybody. And those people are going to reach out and try to find a way to get water.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Pam?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'll sort of make this short and sweet. The GEIS that was recommended by the Suffolk County Planning Commission, and the reason they recommended it was that it would actually speed up processes of applications going forward because the island itself would have in place regulations on development in certain areas based on their environmental impact. That's why they're recommending it. The fact that Meg, you said the consultant is going to make that determination, I think is incorrect. The town board is the lead agency. And it's up to the town board to decide whether or not a GEIS will be necessary or not. It's not the consultant. The town board makes the decision. The town board makes the negative declaration. The consultant is only helping you do the paperwork to that end.
Correct.
The other, well, because you said that the consultant is deciding on whether or not a GEIS is done, and that's not correct. It must go to the town board.
You're
The other
right.
thing that I'd just like to mention about the marinas is that you mentioned Island Boatyard, Cockles Harbor. Pecosi's is actually a marina, and the yacht club has marina properties. The one that doesn't is the Clarks. The Clark's properties are on the tax rolls as vacant commercial. So those could become anything they want them to be as a vacant commercial lot. I don't suppose that the Boatyard and Cockles Harbor Marina or Pecosi's on Bridge Street, which is not all of Bridge Street, and the yacht club is going to be willing to give up their tax status as marinas. But those are the properties on the island that are taxed as marina property. So I'm happy to hear that you might get rid of that marina district, business district. The benefits are that they get tax breaks when you look at what they've done in Nantucket with such a thing. But I'm glad that you're reconsidering that as well as the local revitalization program. I don't know where you were thinking of doing that. Was that going to be just specifically for Bridge Street, which certainly makes sense? And I'm looking forward to the continued conversation on all of this. Thanks very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, Pam. All right, anybody else? We make a motion that we adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.